Are we truly addressing data security issues, or are we inadvertently discriminating against China-based companies or Chinese citizen-owned companies in the name of national security? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. Are we solving the problems, or are we creating new problems?
What factors make Chinese companies succeed or fail in U.S. markets?
Over the years, due to fierce competition in the domestic Chinese consumer market, Chinese technology companies have become incredibly competitive and innovative. Their ability to innovate and cater to mass consumers, or even create new consumer habits, is impressive. Their secret sauce of success also wins them global markets if done right. This is why you see companies like Shein and TikTok doing well. While Shein doesn't really sell to the Chinese domestic market, they have excelled in supply chain consolidation and efficiency. This is based on decades of Chinese garment manufacturing and export experience. Now, while we see some success of those companies, many have failed, mostly due to poor adaptation to local markets. Many Chinese technology companies are so used to Chinese markets that they have a difficult time adjusting to other market users' behavior. What makes them successful may not work in non-Chinese markets. So, for example, product market fit and user experience are key elements for success, but very few Chinese practices can be directly exported to non-Chinese markets. In other words, many haven't learned the hard lesson of localization well. So I've seen many trying to go abroad, or in Chinese is called 出海, but not many have been as successful as TikTok and Shein.
Why are Chinese tech companies entering the U.S. subject to increased scrutiny?
Well, there are many reasons. In earlier days, simply not abiding by regulations or laws when they enter the US market, such as intellectual property, was a major dispute between the US and China. That's how Huawei was embroiled in US legal cases early on before it was viewed as a commercial espionage case. And more recently, due to the advancement of technology in almost every sector of consumers' daily lives, as well as the ambiguous relationship between business and government in China, meaning the government's ultimate control over business and society, the concern over protecting American user data privacy has been elevated to national security. This was how TikTok first got caught in the crossfire during the Trump administration. This is currently the most prevalent argument against Chinese technology companies in the US consumer market. From e-commerce like Shein, Temu, dating app, Grindr, autonomous vehicles, and healthcare equipments to the building of public transportation, etc. The possibility of the Beijing government accessing and abusing large amounts of American consumer data collected by the Chinese technology companies becomes a major national security concern. Then there are concerns over advanced technologies such as AI facial recognition being used to aid the Beijing government's suppression of dissenting voices, including alleged human rights abuses of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. This is why AI companies like SenseTime, MegV, and Hikvision are on the US entity list, meaning anyone doing business with them will require the US government's approval. And in the case of TikTok, because it's an influential social media platform, increasingly a source of news and information, how and whether its algorithm is designed to influence opinions and disseminate information has become a focus. This is the broader conversation of disinformation and misinformation. But more fundamental to TikTok's problem is its parent ownership with ByteDance, which is headquartered in China. So whether the Beijing government has influence over TikTok's algorithm, which implies how information is disseminated to influence American users, becomes a foreign interference issue. And of course, we cannot deny that there's competition between China-based companies and US-based companies. The US lobbying efforts that went in to prevent Chinese competitors in the name of national security or anything else are not insignificant.
How can Chinese companies in the U.S. build trust with the public and with government regulators?
First of all, being a good company that offers products and services that consumers can trust is fundamental to any business in any market. This applies to American and Chinese companies. And second, be humble and create value. Entering a new market is not just about dominating consumers with your products. What values are you adding to the consumers, the market, and society that can shield you from any potential criticism? China-based companies are less experienced in thinking about business relationship with society and with the government. They tend to be laser focused on business operations and execution. This is because of the stage of their economic and business development. China didn't really have a market economy until just about 30 years ago. And the rapid growth of business and commerce in the last 20 years was largely to fulfill the basic needs of Chinese consumers. When you have such a large middle class, like China's 700 million people, businesses are just busy creating products to fulfill their basic needs. But as basic needs are met, products need to provide additional value. This is what I would call the soft power and social value of business. China-based businesses are doing better today as the Chinese economy is gradually transitioning from quantity to quality-based growth models, and consumers also want different products and services. China-based businesses need to remember when entering a new market is even more important to arm yourself with soft power and the right social values and impact beyond simply selling a product or a service. Now, at this point, I'm not really sure how much national security concerns can be mitigated easily because of the fundamental distrust between Chinese and US governments. However, whether a China-based company will become a target of the media, US Congress, or for the US government to take action against you is a totally different matter. This is largely about whether your products are good, whether you abide by US rules and regulations, whether you have the trust of American consumers, and whether you have done enough stakeholder engagement so the regulators, the media, the unions, or the competitors won't complain about you. In other words, you cannot make any mistakes and you have to hold yourself to higher standards.
What policies are needed in the U.S. to better address data security concerns?
I'm not really sure if we could entirely address the data security concerns through regulations or policies alone, because the US distrust is in the Beijing government and its alleged control over China-based companies. And this distrust is not wrong because of the opaque nature of the Chinese government. It is possible, to my knowledge, however, to have controlled access and to minimize data sharing between the US and China by setting up separate data centers, using different clouds, and limiting permissible employee access by their nationality. But do companies want to go down that path given the cost? And is this the kind of approach we're advocating for if we want to foster business innovation and competitiveness? It is an important question as we try to balance national security and business competitiveness. Interestingly, we're seeing China-based companies setting up subsidiaries in Singapore or elsewhere, or Chinese owners changing their citizenship to avoid being viewed as Chinese. In that case, are we truly addressing data security issues, or are we inadvertently discriminating against China-based companies or Chinese citizen-owned companies in the name of national security? Again, these are questions we have to ask ourselves. Are we solving the problems or are we creating new problems? Is it better or worse for American competitiveness? Lastly, the lack of knowledge about China-based companies and how they operate, as well as their relationship with the Chinese government, needs to be much better understood here in the United States. There's this mystery and all kinds of imagination about China, about the Chinese government, and about Chinese businesses, largely due to insufficient understanding. And this lack of understanding could lead to wrong policy solutions and be counterproductive to our objectives. And the only way to dispel the mystery around anything China is through increasing exchanges between our people business, and society.